All right.
Yeah.
This just in. Breaking news. Dratnus and I accidentally missed a day in Racer World First recap coverage, but I swear we can explain. So, if you haven't been following the Racer World First recaps outside of our videos, I would like to apologize. The Racer World First is over, and Echo has won, and we expected to record a finale yesterday, is why we delayed it so long, right?
Yeah. So yesterday, and the problem as well was that I started casting at 3 a.m. yesterday, which is, usually we record these things at midnight, but they kept going yesterday. They kept going until 4 something a.m. when they were like, all right, we can't do this. But, they were sub 10% at that point, right? They were really thinking it was any pull territory. And I think that was wrong. It was not. I mean, it was sort of any pull territory, but it was the kind of any pull territory where they weren't actually that high percent to kill it on any given pull because it was so like gameplay intensive. And so if they were playing it while they were tired, they were going to be inting a lot more, which we did sort of start to see at the end of that day. So those smart people among us were saying they should have gone to bed hours ago.
Let's explain exactly what happened within the last 48 hours. So whenever we left you guys off last time, the video started and we were kind of talking about how Liquid and Echo were both at like 25% on the boss. At that night, Liquid, I think, turned off their streams and had like Echo turned off their streams and Liquid both turned off their streams, I think is what happened that night. And then both of them had like a 20% pull, and then both of their streams started. Okay, so Echo, whenever they started their stream yesterday now, had a like 15% pull or like even like a 10% pull very fast, and they were like chaining P3 pulls together. Liquid then starts their stream and then also hits down like after they come back from going dark. They have like 20% on the boss. They also very quickly hit the boss down to 10%. Blizzard comes in with a nerf to Fire Act, right? It was probably 30 hours ago at the time that we're recording this right now.
It was 9 p.m. local time for Echo. So the boss gets nerfed, 5 or 4% health gets taken off of it. And so the call kind of gets made. Okay, we're going to stay here until this boss dies because with this nerf, we think it can die. And we think if we go to bed, Liquid will kill it before we wake up. All of that ended up being wrong. Neither Echo nor Liquid were able to kill it before going to bed on their respective days. Echo went to bed at 4:30 a.m., gigabricked their sleep schedule, had to delay their next day's start time until 1 p.m. Whereas Liquid, a little bit more of a disciplined earlier sleep, although they did also push it a little bit at the end of their day. And then Echo got up at like 1 p.m. local time. Liquid got up at 10 a.m. for their local time or whatever, so a few hours later, and then both guilds were just trading pulls back to back all day. We started the day with, it was like 9% was Echo's best, 6% was Liquid's best, and then there was a point where they were both at 1.7%, and that was where Echo ended up killing. It was from 1.7 to 0 on a great pull, but the phase 3 is just deceptively hard. The odds of wiping ramp up exponentially as the number of seeds go up. So in those final few blazes, you can get there pretty reliably after you've progressed for a while, but you need to get there like 20, 30 times before you're going to be able to actually kill the boss is what it looks like, because there's just so many seeds out, which means passive damage is high on everybody because those mythic seeds are now you've got 8 of them putting debuffs on people, and they can't be left on the floor like the non-mythic seeds can be. And you also have to then navigate the blazes, right? And if each blaze is now trying to dodge 8 seeds, and they're just shooting in all different directions all around the boss, and half of your room is now denied from fire that you've dropped, it's just chaotic as heck. So unbelievably close race. Liquid 1.72%, Echo 1.79%, where Echo ended up winning. It was anybody's game up to that point, and as of the time of recording this, Liquid haven't killed yet, but I hope they do soon. And, I know it's like demoralizing, right, to see the other team win. That happened to Echo on Aberrus, where they were very close on Sarkareth and then lost and ended up, trolling kind of for a few hours until they could get it going again. But Liquid really did play phenomenally this tier as well. And the total like viewership and everything, all the hype around this race could not exist if it wasn't so close between the top 2 teams, right? Like you can look back at Sepulchre, a tier that had a really good end boss, a really cool fight, really exciting, but it wasn't a 2-horse race by the end, right? And that tier was just did not have the exciting finish that this tier did. I think this is the best race to World First we've ever had, and I think it will be very hard to ever top, 6 hours on one day and like 12 hours the previous day of just both teams pulling deep into the boss. Like that is completely unprecedented.
Echo finishes out like a pretty monumental comeback. I think that there were multiple periods during the race world first that you and I were talking, and we gave Liquid
Yeah,
70-30 odds like
seventy
multiple
thirty for a
times.
while there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Echo's ability to be able to come back, and honestly, just both Liquid and Echo's ability to be able to win the race world first kind of out of nowhere due to how good they are just as organizations and as teams makes the race to world first honestly something special to watch. And it makes it just a genuinely much better viewer experience because both of the teams are good. Now, Echo got the upper hand this time. Liquid got the upper hand last time. It's like it's been traded back and forth a lot. I think that Echo looked great on Farak. Overall, I think that Liquid lost due to the fact that they were a little bit less consistent in phase one. But meanwhile, Echo was able to kind of capitalize and win the whole entire race based off being more consistent and just better play during P3. And they looked, I mean, it's really hard to criticize these two teams and be like, yeah, they should have done this differently. They should have done this better.
It's easy to come up with narratives where after the fact you see the fact that Echo won, and then you start describing all the things that Liquid did as bad and all the things that Echo did as good. But the reality is, we were fractions of a percent, or like one person stepping a few meters to the side and wiping the rate on Echo's side, or not wiping the rate on Liquid's side, from this being just the exact flipped conversation there. So I don't really think there's any like thing to criticize about Liquid, or really any way that Echo like gaps them or anything this tier, because there's been tiers where gapping has happened, right? Like Sepulcher and Nihilotha, those are tiers where you can just point to things and be like, all right, fundamentally this was huge, and one team just had the sauce, right? Either to be able to play for a long time, or like adding a 21st player, raid leading from the outside. Those were just like huge steps forward that one team had and the other team didn't. This time around, it's just like, yeah, if you go back in time 24 hours and you mess up the RNG seed a little bit of the universe, this could go either way. This 50-50 24 hours ago.
I definitely agree. And there was also a question as to whether or not people were going to be weirdos about the 13-hour advantage thing. Fuck it. I hate those conversations. I hate the conversations so much.
So it's hard to be sure, obviously. You can't really examine the counterfactual that hard, but my sense, and there are some tweets even that you can see from some Echo Raiders before they got the kill, was like, whoever wins this race was the best, right? Like there's not going to be, because obviously you could still blame the global release or whatever. You could look at nerf timings and criticize them, but honestly, like the nerf timing was good. The nerf was good. To both Farak and Tindril received well targeted, precise nerfs, and timing was not like egregious on any of those. It was good. This was, I think it was a clean race, and whichever team, whether they won or lost, I think both teams were going to be saying that.
I mean, we saw a lot of heavy criticism. I was actually kind of expecting our video yesterday before I realized that the video was going to before I realized that the video was going to like be delayed and stuff like that. I was expecting to kind of talk about the Farak nerfs and if that actually impacts like the texture of what the race is going to end up looking like. And thank God it didn't. Okay, so let's take a second to kind of talk about just the race as a whole, some of the things that we liked, some of the things that we didn't like. How did you feel about Echo going in on day one and doing like the for fun run on NA?
That was cool. The for fun normal on NA. Yeah, I mean, I think it was cool. It was good content. They might decide it was too much hassle and not. I mean, I suspect they won't have time to do it in a start of expansion situation next expansion.
That's true. Yeah.
But, because you just need all the time to like do all the super rares or whatever dumb thing it is instead of super rares next expansion, right? Like that's the most time intensive of getting all your mirrors ready. But will they do it again in future? Maybe. It was kind of a cool. I mean, it was just a gimmick, right? It was for fun. There was potentially some value in like weak auras info and stuff like that, but I suspect that was pretty marginal, and they didn't end up really getting it anyways out of that because their lockout bugged anyway. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it was mostly just a cool little thing they did.
Next,
good for content.
Next up, we have splits. I think at the very beginning of the race, there was a lot of conversation about splits. This is the most splits that we've ever seen out of Race World First competitors. Roger Brown talked about splits being his lifelong mission as something that he needs to either get rid of or have change fundamentally how they work. I would be interested in seeing like if there is like an actual shift on how splits work. Not from a Blizzard level, although I think that would actually be kind of interesting, but more of like a competitor level. I'm always an advocate for them to kind of have a conversation about splits and be like, no more than 6 characters. Anything more than 6 characters is kind of silly. But at the end of the day, these guilds are probably not going to bite on that. Maybe Blizzard will come down with something.
You're going to lose the method, right? Like, Unless Method does that too, in which case you're all going to lose to the guild that's formed by the people that are like, this is dumb, we want to win. And
Was
then
Farok killable
do
without
that.
12 splits? I mean, was Smolder on week
No,
1 killable without 12 splits? Same with
no,
Tendril?
none of like you take 2 item levels off these people, off these characters, and like it's a slower kill by quite a bit. Like you'd be
Yeah.
looking at basically whenever instant dollars kills the boss, maybe you could be a little bit faster than them, but like it's not going to be hugely faster with a little bit less gear. So yeah, I don't know. It's not. I don't think the community solution is feasible, even if you think you could get buy-in from Liquid and Echo, because you need buy-in from more than just Liquid and Echo leadership. You need it from like all of their raiders, and you'd need it from every guild that would beat them with splits, which right now I think is just Method. But Method, Liquid, and Echo have no incentive to really do that right now, aside from the fact that they don't personally like splits, but they like winning and they like being competitive more than they don't like splits. So I'm a pretty firm believer in this being a case of like, if there's not a solution from Blizzard, there's not going to be a solution. But splits do get sort of solved by Blizzard just making the rest of the race better and longer. This is the longest race to World First we've had aside from Sepulcher since it started being televised, and that increases the ratio of Mythic to splits, which I think is part of the reason that this race did so well. Obviously, it being so close at the end was good too, but like, you do effectively have less splits if you have longer prog.
The next thing I kind of want to talk about was difficulty, and something that you were kind of harping on right there. I actually think that for the Race to World First as an audience, more difficult bosses and longer pull bosses do better from like a Race to World First viewership perspective. And I think that this race hit a good sweet spot of Smolder Run was hard, Tendril was very hard, and Farok was also very hard. And that kind of builds up hype over the last, couple of last week basically, where that there's something and you're watching like actual progression and there's something to be able to watch. And I think that like the difficulty of the bosses, whenever they're harder, it makes for a better Race to World First viewership experience. Like what do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, I think the difficulty is good for the Race to World First to have, sufficient. Like, I think that end of second reset or mid to late second reset is a great time for things to die. And obviously, to get there, you need to have bosses that are difficult enough to survive that long. But I think that the type of difficulty is important because, like, Razageth's difficulty, for instance, a lot of it was just like, this number is impossible pre-nerf, right?
Yes, sure.
And that's stupid. Farok and Tindril were none of that difficulty. Like, obviously, both of those bosses got nerfed during Prog, but all of them, like, it was never a case of you just fought a mechanic and you were like, oh, the numbers don't work here. Instead, it was like you fought a mechanic and you're like, wow, this is really, really hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not impossible. And that's, I think, exactly where Race to World First should be. And it leads to it being so fun to watch. I will say, I do think from a viewer experience, Farok P3 doesn't actually have the best, like, readability. It's a bit of a Halandra style phase where when you're watching it, it's just like, yeah, they got to play perfect. They got to play perfect. Oh, they wiped. Let's see if we have a replay that maybe shows what happened, because we can't, you don't actually see it necessarily in real time. But I mean, that's like a minor gripe about that phase. And honestly, it would maybe just be fixed if there was like a big circle that radiated out from whatever seed exploded.
I will say as well, like, just watching both of the streams, it's difficult because like you can see the blazes coming, but it's not always super clear like what they're actually going to be wiping to. Did somebody not drop their bomb in time? Did somebody accidentally pick up somebody else's bomb? Was there a mismatch in juggling? Was there a tornado that like swept across the battlefield and then just blew up a bomb? Like there's a bunch of stuff that can wipe you, that has wiped you, and unless you're listening to comms, something that I noticed this race is actually listening to a decent amount of comms. Listening to comms actually changes like the texture of what you're watching as opposed to just watching it.
Yeah,
without
100%. It is, the comms are really valuable. That's pretty much always what I will watch, even as a caster. Obviously, I think the profession is valuable, but to try and learn what's going on, I try and teach myself by listening to the comms whenever I'm not on.
All right, any final things that we have to really talk about in terms of like meta about the whole entire race?
Nope. I think great tier. I mean, the class balance is a little scuffed, so hopefully now the Race World First is over, they can do a little fix there, because there's some stuff that's like 30% better than some other stuff, which is not great.
Now I will say we
find the Race World First, but like hopefully for the live game they fix it now.
We kind of attack raid buffs pretty frequently, but I will say you probably wouldn't have seen Warlock, Mage, or Druid if they didn't have buffs that were quite valuable.
That is true. The Druid, actually, I mean, Feral Druid is kind of good. People played 2 of them on Tindril, so anytime anybody plays 2 of something, it's
would
not
you ever play
buff.
You would probably play a third Demon Hunter or a third Rogue over that, though, realistically.
You could have done that over the second Druid, though.
Oh, yeah, okay, if you're Echo. Sure, if you're Echo, yeah. I guess Liquid only played 1, right?
Stampeding Roar is a lot of the reason there though as well, which
Yeah.
is sort of raid buffy. Anyways, yeah,
It's
the
not
raid buffs
relevant.
do
It's not
some work
relevant.
to they do some work to make bad class balance a little bit disguised, but I think the core root of the problem is bad class balance, which we are in a little bit of right now. But I think that's always fine at the start of a patch. Just hopefully they fix it nice and soon, so that the health of the long term game and the people playing this patch now, not just in the race world first, but going forward and for the remainder of the patch, get a nice opportunity to not feel like they're just inting if they're not playing BM Hunter or Rogue or whatever.
Oh yeah, you see this weapon?
Yeah, there's the new Fearlath axe, which Mirez is crafting right now. It looks like as of the time of recording this, so it's pretty cool.
I mean, is this thing OP? Like, what it's
Yeah, so I don't know what the details on it are, but I suspect it'll just start dropping in all regions the week after that region has killed the boss for the first time. At least that's what they did with the last one. But this one is, yeah, it looks pretty cool. I don't know, it looks pretty good.
we'll see.
Powerful item.
They said in interviews before that they were gonna change a little bit as to acquisition process to make it a bit more streamlined and easier for players because
Yeah,
players felt
hopefully there's no
unsatisfied.
family protection from week one.
Yeah.
That would be good enough for me.
Yep, I'm interested in seeing what the deal is with the weapon. Overall, though, I think that's it for the Race World First recaps. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I think there's a lot of fun. I think we kind of hit our stride with these recaps so far. Kind of getting a good format.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you next race, maybe.
Surely,
Bye.
we'll see you with the War Within. Goodbye.